Hello, everybody. This is Derek Harris with the Prophets to the People podcast. How y'all been? I know it's been a little bit. I haven't done any interviews lately, but I just chose to come on myself, and just talk about some things that I was going to share anyway previously. But yeah, the podcast, is just about educating people, on just different businesses or different career paths, we all can get into, and just learning from each other, but then also supporting one another. Like if you have, small businesses in the area, or if you are a small business, just bringing a spotlight to those different businesses and those different people who are in our backyard, that we can support, or you already support, and just telling their stories. So that's what those interviews are all about, is just telling other people's stories, everyday people that you and I know, and just sitting down with them and just, seeing the reasons why they got into it, and, how they're able to continue to keep it going. Because even, in a job or even a business, a lot of times it's just about, the longevity, how long have you been doing something, and that's what gives, that knowledge or insight into whatever field that you're in, because you have that experience, you have that knowledge of doing what you've been doing. So if you're someone who's, able to do something for, a good amount of time, you have some information that, everybody can learn from, and so they can be able to develop, one, for the younger generation, but then two, other people who may be looking to get into certain fields and industries, things like that. And so, that's what the podcast is all about, just learning and just giving insights into, what other people are doing in the world today. But today, I just wanted to sit down and just talk about, just knowing what to say yes and no to, because sometimes we do things, because we have to, and that's fine as well. Just a lot of times we have to do things because we have to, it's not necessarily that we want to do it, but we have to do it. And so the good thing about life, you don't always have to do, everything that you don't want to. It doesn't always have to be, that struggle. And a lot of times it's mainly not just for money, but just mainly about our value system, what we value the most, what we believe in, because everybody's values and beliefs are not the same. So, one thing that could be valuable and important to one person may not be valuable and important to somebody else. So sometimes we could try to, pattern our lives after others, and we don't even, value some of the same things that they may value. And so that's one of the biggest things, just growing up, just realizing, what your values are, what you believe in, what you stand for, what you, do want to do, what you don't want to do. And the sooner we can find those things out, the better our lives will be, because, for instance, some people may want to live in the city, and then some people may want to live in the country, And so those lifestyles and those ways of doing things are two different ways of living. And so sometimes we think that we just have to do it the way that, we see everybody else doing it. That's the American way, that's the American dream, or that's just the sign of success, the status symbol, of what other people are doing, and we want to look like we're doing something, or we are somebody. But sometimes, like I said, that could be different, for a lot of different people. So I just remember me growing up, I wanted to be a mechanic, because I like working on stuff and messing with stuff. So I did take some mechanic classes, but I didn't stick with it, long. So fast forward, basically, I'm into sales, but that's what I've always been doing. Is I'm always selling. I've been always selling stuff. Like just growing up, I've been always selling things. So for a long time, I was avoiding sales just because I just didn't want to be that person, where they thought you was always a shady salesperson. Just sometimes salespeople can get a bad name, and so I always try to avoid it for a while. But I was always in positions of customer service, or even in customer service, you have to sell, in a sense, if it's like an upsell or, just trying to make customers happy. It's still within that. You still got to be able to, promote your product, or, keep a good image for the business that you're representing. So some people that I know, they were in sales, and they kind of pushed me into, not push me, but just, encouraged me to get into some positions that were in sales, and it caused me to, be in a position. At first, it was real uncomfortable just because, where you have to work in the position, you have to overcome objections and answer questions about things, and I don't really like a lot of the back and forth. If it's something you don't want, I'm like, well, that's fine. You can go on. I'm not gonna, push you to get something that you don't want. So mainly the things that I do sell, is just things that I know people need, or, they want. And it's not something that I would have to push down their throat to get, or, do too much persuasion. Like, you still have to discuss and, answer questions, things like that. But as far as me trying to make you buy something just so I can get paid, that's not what I'm into. So even as a salesperson, like I was saying, just knowing, what you say yes and no to. So, even if you're in sales positions, like whatever type of position you do take, just believing in the product and the services that you are selling, because that's what makes it a lot easier for you. And then, that's what can help you to sleep at night, whenever you are selling. It's just something that is going to help benefit you and the customer. And so right now I'm in Medicare insurance sales. And so it took me a while, like I said, before I even got into that. So there's a lot of openings, for insurance and different things like that. And all those opportunities used to come available to me growing up, but for some reason I didn't get into it, like I said, because I avoided sales, and then some of them were just commission based. So, that was another thing. Like, you just didn't want to go out here, and if you didn't make any sales, you're not getting paid. And so those were just some of the obstacles that I had to overcome in my life, just getting over that hurdle. But then once I did get into it, I got into a position where they paid you hourly plus bonuses. So it was a little bit more easier to do that, compared to just doing a straight commission. So, once I got into it, and like I say, once you get the base pay plus commissions, it makes it a little bit more easier as you're learning and you're trying to build your book of business. So just realizing, the things that you're willing to do and what you're willing not to do. Some people can do the 100% commissions and be, real successful. And then some people say, they need a base, before they can get out there and try to, sell anything. So just different things like that. If you're a person that, like working with your hands, just finding, fields that you could work in and do that, and so I still do stuff. Like I still work on my own car, and then I still, do, handiwork around the house, stuff like that. So I still try to do stuff, working with my hands. But as far as my occupation, I don't do that. Like I said, because I didn't finish school for it, but I did take some financial services classes. I have a certification in that, and then, like I said, I have health insurance license to help sell Medicare insurance. So those are just some things that you can do where you don't have to have a degree. You can get into and take a couple months to get a certification, and you can make a good living for yourself. And so it's just a lot of things out here that we can do to help support ourselves and our families, that may not take a long time. So that's another thing, like say like you're not a real heavy school person, and a lot of people are not, they're not really into school. It's just some people do it because they want to get a better job, things like that, as far as getting degrees. But then there's a lot of things, like I said, you can get certifications where you don't have to be in school for years, but you can take a couple months or a year or two and get you a certification in the field and make a good living for yourself. A lot of high demand fields only require a certification. So just knowing those things about yourself early can help you out in the long run, where you're not spending years and years and years trying to figure it out. Because like I said, once I didn't get into the mechanic thing, most of the jobs that I have worked have been in customer service or sales, and so that's just because that's like one of my natural abilities, just being able to talk to people, work with people, things like that. And then and so that's just what I've always gotten into. And so then I realized, okay, this is a lucrative field, but now what type of products do you want to sell? And then, like I said, some people that I knew, they were in sales, and they told me about certain sales jobs. So that's what this podcast is all about. Like I said, just mainly informing and just open people's eyes up to different things that you can get into and get ahead. Because if you think about it, not everybody's situation is the same. Like, when people are out here screaming about egg prices, right? Some other people are not even, focusing on like that. They're still going on trips. They're still going to, events, and they still going to different things, spending their money on expensive clothes and shoes or cars, So everybody's situation is not the same. So we can't, like I said, we can't lump ourselves into the same categories as everybody else. And so what I've learned for myself is, just trying to learn how to be self-sustaining, not trying to be like everybody else, like you don't have to have the same amount of money as somebody that might be doing certain things depending upon how you're trying to live, And so, so one way you can kind of combat certain costs and things like that, is just learning different skills. Like one instance, so I got 3 sons, including me, and so as far as the barbershop, for years, I haven't taken them to the barbershop regularly. Like my older son now, since he's 15, I take him to the barbershop because, he wants certain type of haircuts that I'm not learning how to do. So mainly I just do the even all over and, do a little taper. I've learned that, do a taper. So I do me and my 2 younger sons hair like that, in order to help save money that way. So just little things are things that you can learn around the house, just if you're trying to lay floors, or, if you're trying to learn some plumbing stuff, or, some decorating kind of stuff. Because my wife, she likes decorating and, enhancing the house. And so it's things that I've learned in school. Like I was in woodworking in school. So now I'm utilizing some of those skills that I've learned then for my house. I want to learn more skills about, house building and things like that. But those are just things that you can learn, and it's going to help you to save money on your house, so that way you don't have to pay somebody for every little thing you get done. Or, your car, if you know how to change your oil, change your brakes, fix stuff on your car, whatever it is, or if you're willing to learn it, that's going to help you to save money right there. You don't have to run to the mechanic or, run to the home maintenance person every time. Or if you have clothes and, you need some stuff done with that, if you know how to sew, or repair whatever's going on with your clothes, those are ways that you can, save money. Or if it's, shoes, if you know how to, if you take care of your stuff longer, your clothes and your shoes, if you know how to, maintain it and take care of it, clean it, that's gonna help you to save money there. Or if you know how to buy secondhand things and make it look new, restore it and refurbishing it, from furnitures to cars to house, all that kind of stuff. Those are ways that you can save money. So it's like everything don't always have to be a struggle. Or if it's food, and these are just examples, and this is stuff I do. Like if it's food, so just this year I started a garden, but I've always wanted to start a garden, but I feel like, well, I don't have a lot of land, to do one. So what I did is I just bought me a little garden bed, in my backyard. It's not that big, but I bought a garden bed, planted some seeds that I got from the Dollar Tree, and they're starting to sprout up, and then I'm able to eat some of that food from there. Some kale I got, the tomatoes are still growing, the squash, the cucumbers, so those are still coming in. But those are other ways to save money. So if you do have the space, so eventually when I do get some more space, I want to get some chickens, some goats, some different livestock, so that way, I can save money on that aspect of my life, as far as food. So a lot of times, people are struggling, just because maybe you're not learning new skills, and that's the biggest thing, is just continuing to learn. So you may not like going to school, but we have to continue to learn, and so that's the biggest thing that I've realized in my life. It's not only about just what you want, but it's just like I have to be willing to learn new things